What would you say you do here?
It's the Signal Chords, home of the Underground podcast. A podcast dedicated to up-and-coming bands, labels, artists, and more. Plug in and join your host, Brad Nunnery, as he dives deep into what the future of music has to hold and discover something new along the way. What else do you have to do?
What's up, everyone? This is Mario here in San Diego and
Angel in Texas.
we're from the band
Nights Like Thieves.
and you're listening to Signal Chords.
Home of the Underground podcast.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. That's the latest song and music video from our friends in Nights Like Thieves. It's called Move On. Thank you so much to Mario and Angel for providing that promo for us. Really do appreciate it, guys. Now, speaking of that music video, look out for yours truly in it, as well as my next guest on Signal Chords, Home of the Underground podcast. His name is Joe Marsh. He's one hell of a producer, mixer, engineer out of the UK. He mixed that song as well as our intro song by Alter Apex called Soul Direction. He's worked with Attendant, Just a Ride, a lot of Signal Chords alumni. We're going to talk to him about his process, what it takes to be an engineer. Really fun conversation ahead. So stick around, hang out. It's Signal Chords, Home of the Underground podcast.
Then I'll stop bleeding, and I'm so ready to feel as if my heart is about to die. Yeah, I'm so ready. I'm so ready.
That's the latest from Kite Thief. The new name of that song is called The Tide, and the man behind that song is with me now, Joe Marsh from Joe Marsh Recording. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, Brad? Good to chat.
Yeah, man, it's been about 3 years since you and I have got to know each other, working with Nights Like Thieves, Alter Apex, Just a Ride, all those bands. I feel like you and I have been, basically pen pals for the past 3 years, but we have yet to be face to face. So thank you so much for joining the podcast, man. I got a lot of questions for you.
My pleasure, dude. Yeah, it's great. It's great to talk in person, virtually, and one day hopefully we'll get to hang out and have a beer. So until then, we'll do this.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, I would have a beer right now, but it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and
a little bit early.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and we got a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. I have a lot of questions. Due to the fact that, you're a producer, mixer, engineer, you have a lot of technical capabilities. I went to Full Sail. I went to recording engineering school. But my knowledge nowadays, I went 23 years ago. October will be 23 years ago. I went to recording engineering school, and I know things have changed since then. I think, Pro Tools was just in its infancy back then. So I won't get too technical because I'll probably date myself. So we'll just keep it at a high level. What's that?
Do you want some trivia to start the thing off with? Do you know the first song that was released I think it's the first number one that was recorded on Pro Tools?
It's got to be a Michael Jackson song. No?
Mm-mm. Ricky Martin. I think it was Living La Vida Loca. Someone might have to.
That was the first song that was recorded on Pro Tools. Are you serious?
And number one, I think, and got to number one. I'm pretty sure that's the fact, but yeah, we might have to Google it to double check. But
it's all been downhill from here.
And that was the peak, and look at where we've got to.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's so many things about Pro Tools that just mystified me when originally doing it. I used Logic. And I learned on Logic, and I've just stuck with it. They all
do pretty much the same thing. Logic's quite nice because a lot of the bands I work with is quite affordable. So a lot of the bands I work with, they do stuff in Logic and they can just send me the session file, so it makes life a lot easier. So I can use Pro Tools a bit, but I just stick with what I know.
No, that's awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and start at the beginning, because I kind of want to figure, poke your brain a little bit, kind of figure out, where you are today and what led you to today. So let's start in the beginning. How did you first get into music, and what about music that really drew you in?
I think probably like a lot of people, it's growing up in a house where music's playing all the time. So my parents would have their record player, and I was really into Billy Joel and the Beatles and Blondie. And then I got my first acoustic guitar and then an electric guitar, and I kind of just fiddled around for a bit. And then I remember one day I was in secondary school, so I would have been about 14 maybe, and I was a bit of a nerdy kid, didn't have loads of friends, had my little friend group, and this guy came up to me, and he was called Tom Maloney, and I knew he played drums, and he was a really tall dude in his black trench coat, and just came up to me and goes, "You know how to play guitar, don't you?" I was like, yeah. "I'm starting a band, come to my band practice on Friday night." I was like, "Okay." You couldn't say no because I was too terrified of him.
Too scared,
and it went from there, and literally from that day I started playing in bands, and it was like the Britpop kind of era in the UK. So bands like Oasis and Blur and Stereophonics. So it was very kind of much like that. And then when I was like 15, 16, just finished my exams. And I remember the day we'd finished our exams, I went over to someone's house and they said, "Oh, have you heard this song? This is a band called Green Day." I was like, "All right, cool. Yeah." Put it on. And it was Hitching a Ride. And
oh, wow.
I was like, what is this? And from then on, it was like punk music. So it was Green Day, NoFX, Offspring, Blink. It was that. And that probably, to my detriment, didn't improve my guitar playing too much, because all I ever wanted to do was just play as fast and as loud as we could. There wasn't much technical stuff going on. And, my buddies, we played in bands together for years and years and years. And it was trying to make it in bands. And I went to uni as well, and I studied music systems engineering, which is an audio technology course. But kind of everything that I do today isn't really a result of that. It's more a result of playing in bands and being around music and learning myself. So I could have not gone to uni, saved myself thousands of pounds, and probably still ended up where I am today. But hindsight, you live, you learn, right?
Yeah, no, I feel the same way, because I went to Full Sail to record bands and do all that kind of stuff. I thought I wanted to do it, but once, like pretty much 2 weeks into college, I decided I don't want to do this. I don't want to work on drums. I don't want to work on reverb. I can't, play with these buttons all day and try to, because I'm an easy, what do you call it? I need instant gratification, and it's a process, to get the right sound and stuff. And my attention span isn't that long. So recording engineering was kind of like, okay, it was great to get the experience, but I ultimately wanted to go in radio, and I could have saved so many thousands of dollars by going there. But the only good thing about it is that it allowed me to get an internship that, you needed to get, college credit or whatever. So if anything, it cost me $25,000 or $30,000 or whatever it was at the time, just to get that internship. So that's the way I look at it, because it didn't really teach me very much about radio.
Same. I mean, I learned a lot it was more about taking responsibility for stuff, and obviously you're kind of out on your own for the first time in the world, and you've got all these deadlines, and it taught me to work hard and do that. But in terms of practical skills and things like that, other than the very basics, like knowing the one thing I did learn that I use every day on the first day was they taught you how to coil, and every audio engineer does this, coil a microphone cable properly. So that was like lesson number one, day number one. Right. And I use that today. So, but otherwise, hindsight, I would have gone something and been a doctor or done something useful,
Right. So what band would you say is your, kind of the pillar of the bands, you said you were into Oasis and Blur and that Britpop kind of stuff, but what was that one band that I had Faith No More when I was in high school, and still to this day I track them, still to, 40 years later, I'm still like, if they have new music out, what's one of those bands for you that, that you just consistently track and just love every time they put out some stuff?
I think for me, there's a few defining moments in terms of when I think about my life and how my taste in music evolves. There's a few defining moments. So like when I was very young, it was Billy Joel, and I still love Billy Joel today. I think his music's incredible. Meatloaf was my first ever concert was a Meatloaf concert, and it was absolutely incredible. And rest in peace, Meatloaf. He again still will jam his stuff all the time. Then the Britpop stuff. But I remember the first time I heard Nirvana on a school trip on the school bus, and this guy was like, you gotta listen to this. And they put had Nevermind on a portable CD player, and it was like, whoa. You know, going from that to Nirvana, and the same with Green Day. Then I heard Green Day, and it was like, wow, because this is kind of pre MySpace sort of stuff. So it's very much still you were going on recommendations of people for songs, and Green Day and the whole punk thing. And then I discovered Thrice, and Thrice are my favorite band, and that kind of from the Thrice kind of defined where I am today. A lot of the music that I listen to today is kind of evolved around them, but they're my kind of pinnacle number one band, but through those different eras, if that makes any sense.
I love the Artist in the Ambulance was their was their main record, but I really love Viejesu. That was like that I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but that was like the record for me. That was like my pinnacle favorite record, and then from there they went and often did like that experimental record or whatever. They expanded their sound. But they're always evolving. I always loved Thrice. I got a chance to meet them in radio. Really killer guys. Cool. Yeah. We did a meet and greet with a whole bunch of listeners and stuff, and got pictures with them. And they did a couple songs before their show for our, for our winners and stuff. But really killer band. Love those guys. But that's awesome. So, you say you were in bands. Like, did you ever like perform out there in the UK? Like, did you go around and play gigs, or was it just kind of a garage just screwing around?
Nah, well, I had a couple bands. Like the first one was kind of screwing around a little bit and playing house parties and friends parties, but we weren't great. Then I had a band with two of my best mates who I introduced my drummer. My best mate, who's now my drummer, well, was my drummer. We're not in a band anymore. He was into like dance music and stuff, and I was like, dude, no, you got to listen to this. You got to check out this band. They're called Nirvana. And he was like, what? And that turned him on. And then I got him to learn drums, and we're like, we need a bass player. So we kind of bullied the best mate into buying a bass guitar, and we formed a band called Someday, and we had a couple of other members, but it was like skate punk kind of stuff. It wasn't anything technical. We thought we were going to make it. We thought we were great, but you listen back now, and the memories are incredible because we created this little music scene around here, and there was nothing. We're a town where we're not in a big city, so we used to have hundreds of kids turn up to shows, which we built out of from the ground up. So we still get people coming to us now, and we're like, yeah, those shows back in the day were amazing. So I was in that band for a while, and then the main band that I was in for many years was called A Tale of Two Cities, and we tried to make it. We did plenty of tours and recordings and whatnot, and that we had members leave, and it just kind of fell by the wayside. But that taught me a lot of things, and I still use a lot of that knowledge now with the bands that I work with. Are looking for a bit of guidance, a little bit of advice, and I can kind of draw upon the experiences that I have had there, as well as from the kind of more business and recording side of it now, and just try and give bands a little bit of advice as and when they may need it. But yeah, plenty of tours. So I know the story. I played plenty of terrible shows, plenty of awesome shows as well, but the terrible ones always stick in your mind more.
Yeah, it's one of those like you said, it's more about the memories that you make, and you go back and you listen to it, and it's the experience and it's the ride that you're doing, and it's all experience, and you're doing your thing. And so let's talk about how you got into recording. What made you decide to really get into it? Were you always kind of a technical minded kind of person growing up, and is it just something that you took to? How'd that all start?
Yeah, I mean, we used to in one of the earlier bands. Can you remember mini disc players? Remember those little mini disc players?
Oh yeah. Yep.
So you could plug into those and record audio as well as through an optical cable. You could record direct audio. So we used to have a band practice, and we'd set up microphones and everything, and just record on my little mini disc player. And that's probably where it started. And then we have like our final year at school over here. You either go to college or sixth form. I know you call it slightly different things over in the US, but so I was in sixth form, and I picked up this university brochure and I was flicking through, and then I saw the music systems engineering degree, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I like bands. I like recording. I want to do that. Did it for university, recorded my own band, and was always kind of recording demos and things on the side. But we went to a proper studio to record when we needed to put something out. So I was always doing it on the side. And then eventually, as I got a bit older and a bit more experienced and a bit more kind of nous about things, I would record my own band stuff. And then it would kind of go from there. And then I'd say to a mate's band, oh, do you want me to record you? Can we do this? And it's just eventually grown. A similar story to what a lot of producers and engineers do.
Right.
But it's more common than I find, getting a placement in the studio and going from there. A big chunk of people they're playing in bands, they record their demos, then they record their mates' bands, and then that's the path typically.
Yeah, no, the studio that you record out of, is that your studio, or you're recording into somebody's studio, or is that at your house, or where are you recording at?
So I record out of Orchard Studios, which is near Glastonbury. It's not my studio, but I'm good mates with James, who runs it. And it was about 7 years ago now, an old band, I was recording stuff with them, and we wanted to record drums in a better studio. And it was just a case of Googling, and I found the studio and we hired it. And from there, I've just created this really good friendship with James, and I take all my bands there and he'll hire me into engineer sessions and stuff. So it's about 30 minutes from where I live. And then I just bring stuff home into this room to mix. So it's a cool little studio.
It's good that you can kind of mix it up to where you can go into the studio and then come back home, with technology. You have those capabilities of being able to do that. And especially with, you're mixing and recording, not necessarily recording, but you're pretty much mixing records in the US, and that's just incredible that how you can take audio files and just do it and create the best sound from miles away. So speaking of which, so what part of the process that you really love when you're recording or getting with a band or mixing or producing, what part of it do you love, and what part of it do you despise that you don't look forward to? So it's a two-parter question. Go ahead.
So the bits I love, I like working with bands from the demo stage. So I get this a lot where if I'm chatting to a band and they'll send me some demos over, and that first listen to a song, you can only listen to something for the first time once. So when I'm listening to a song for the first time, I'll get my notepad out and I'll listen to it and I'll just scribble notes. And it will just really have all these different ideas pinging off in my mind that maybe this riff goes on too long, or this part's really cool, this should go on for longer. And I'm thinking about the structure and the melodies. And so I'll scribble all of that down, and then I'll go back over it and refine kind of my ideas and listen a couple times more and think, okay, this works. So what I'm trying to do is just give some feedback from a different perspective, because when you're writing the song, and there's, if you're in a band, there's 4 or 5 of you, and you're bouncing the ideas off the 5 of you, and you're listening to it together, and you kind of don't want to show too many people because it's in its very early stages. So you have this very insular little circle of ideas, and what you may think is the best bit of the song to someone else outside might not be, or there might be a little bit buried in there that someone else might pick up and go, that's really cool, why don't you make more of this? So I really love that, working with bands on the demos, because I'll often hear, even if it's just a rough little demo, I'll have the final picture in my mind of how I want it to sound pretty much straight away, and then it's a case of, right, how do we get there? So I absolutely love that back and forth from the very early demo stage. I love tracking stuff as well in the studio, because you just have these moments of creativity, which is just so great, because with music, and getting a bit philosophical, you're creating something from nothing. So you'll go in on the day and you'll have this idea of how you want the song to go, you have all the parts, and then all of a sudden someone will have an idea which didn't exist 5 minutes before, and then it just goes from there. And it's a really cool process to be part of, and you can come out and just be like, wow, that was such a cool day, because we've just created this amazing song. And music just, again, it's getting a bit spiritual, but it just resonates with people. It brings out all these emotions and feelings and stuff. So those little magic moments in the studio are great. I love working with vocalists and coming up with different melodies and harmonies and making drums sound massive, all that fun stuff. So yeah, the whole process of recording,
you love it. Yeah. Now, do you ever get a you were saying that, like, you have an idea everything's ready to go, and like 5 minutes later, you know, into the beginning of it, someone changes something. So this is what separates you, you and me. It's when somebody says, "Oh, let's change this up." I'm like, "No, I just spent all night like thinking about how this is doing." You know, like we're not changing it because, you know, because I'm so dead focused, you know, and like if you switch it off, and that's why I know I wouldn't be a really good engineer. But that's a great way to do it, and it's a great way to think about it. Now, what are some of the kind of, I mean, you don't have to get about too much. I know you love the whole process, but what, you know, when you before you have a cup of coffee and you're like you thinking about your day, and you know you're like, oh man, if I have to work on that tom, or if I have to work on that snare one more time, have there been any instances like that? And if so, what?
It's more the editing, like, and I think a lot of people get this. It's the tediousness of it, because it kind of has to be done. Stuff has to be cleaned up. Vocals need to be tuned and tweaked and aligned. And it can just be very tedious and boring. I've looked at outsourcing it and paying someone else to do it for me. But I don't. I do it all myself. And that's the thing I don't like as much, because again, that's not really creative. It's just clicking buttons and chopping things up. So that's the bit that I don't enjoy, is editing stuff. And that's it really. I like the rest of it. I love mixing. You know, I'll wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking about how the snare could be better, but that's all part of it. You know, you just want it to be the best that it can be.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. How many, you know, I'm an overthinker every time I do this podcast, or when I air a podcast, or when I'm editing this podcast, or I'm working on the graphics, or I'm getting questions, you know, lined up like I did last night, you know, to talk to you today. But I tend to overthink everything, and I have 9 million things going on in my brain. I'm like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, and then it's all said and done. And then you look back at it and you're like, man, I should have did this, I should have did this or that. Or do you have a lot of those moments when you record bands and then the song comes out and you just listen to it?
Oh yeah, all the time. All the time. But I think I'm kind of better at dealing with it now, because you can obsess over things. But what's the quote? Great art is never finished, it's abandoned, or something like that. I'm probably paraphrasing it. So you've just got to kind of at some point go, okay, I need to move on from this now. Yeah. Not, I mean, good enough is the wrong word, but you can always strive to tweak something. You'll always want to tweak something a little bit more, and you're going to get to a point where those tweaks aren't making a difference, or they're going to be of detriment to the song. But yeah, I mean, all the time. And then I'll release something and it'll come out a couple months later, and I'll listen back and I'll be like, man, that hi-hat's too quiet, or you know, that whatever it'll be. But I think that's natural, because you always think that you can do stuff better, and that's progress. So
yeah, as an engineer and as a mixer and producer and stuff, when you listen to regular music, not the music necessarily that you're working on, like bands today, do you overanalyze how it sounds, or are you just a fan? Is it hard for you to turn the switch off from you know, producer to just a music fan, and you can listen to a song? Like if you listen to Nirvana or any of these bands that you didn't help, like these newer bands, do you overanalyze like how those songs sound, or are you just keep an open ear and you turn the switch off?
Yeah, I some people do, but I don't. I can just switch off. A lot of the time, if I'm listening to music for pleasure, I am driving, or I'm going for a run, or I'm in the gym. So I'm just vibing to it. If someone has sent me a list of reference songs, like if I'm working with a band, I'll say, put together a little Spotify playlist of a few songs that you like. And then I'll listen to those songs and be like, okay, how are they getting this guitar tone? How are those vocals being done? And I'll sit and think about it. But if I'm listening to a band that I love, it would just kill the music for me. So I'm like, no, I just enjoy this. I love how they sound, and that's the reason I do what I do, is because I love how it makes me feel, and the sound and the emotion that it drives. So I'm lucky, I feel, in the fact that I can separate myself from the technicality of it when I want to.
It's one of those, that's a gift. I mean, to be able to switch that off, I mean,
good.
I listen to go ahead.
Like for example, bands who re-record albums, right? So for example, Thrice did one recently where they re-recorded Artist in the Ambulance, and if you listen back to the original Artist in the Ambulance, okay, it's not compared to how things sound now, it's maybe not the cleanest recording. I know the band themselves weren't overly happy with the final mix of how it sounds, but the way it was then is like a picture of that point in time. They re-recorded it now, and actually I think they've done a really good job because it sounds like them now playing the songs, so it's not lost to me any of the feeling. But then I remember back to Senses Fail.
Yeah.
So I was really into Senses Fail. That first EP, I can't remember what it's called now, but the one with 187 and Steven and all those songs. And I listened to that so many times back in the day when that was out. And again, you listen back to that now and it doesn't sound sonically maybe the best sounding thing in the world, but the emotion and the feeling behind those songs, it's like you can just really tell when he's screaming those lyrics that they're really all in on this. They re-recorded that a few years back with Bo Bichelle, Saracen guitarist, who's one of my favorite producers, and it sounds great sonically. It sounds really good, but it doesn't have the same feeling for me personally. Yeah. So I'm kind of losing track of where we were with the question, but I hope that's kind of answers things. In the moment, stuff happens for a reason. You're taking a snapshot of that moment in time, and then later on you'll always analyze stuff and how stuff sounds and want it to sound better, but that's not necessarily the right thing to do.
Yeah. You were talking about some of your favorite producers. Who are some of your kind of like that you look up to? Is it the people out there that are doing the same thing that you're doing, but have been doing it for a while? You've got a whole bunch of people out there that are producing really good records. Is there somebody that you kind of model your style off of, or somebody that inspires you on the daily? Yeah,
I guess Bo Bichelle is probably the one, like my top one. I just love how all of his records sound, and there's a Bo sound to it. Like I can kind of tell when he's mixed it or he's produced it, and how I hear his productions is kind of like how I would want to go. But you're not the same. You're not that person. You don't have the same gear. You're not recording the same bands. So you can chase a sound all you want. You're going to end up down the end result of what you get because you're hearing it in a particular way. So right. Bo, I think, is one of the guys. Sam Guyana, I like what his stuff sounds like. It's really clean and modern and crisp. I love that. But then put me on the spot. Who else? Colin Britton as well. I really like Colin Britton. So he's done a lot of like Papa Roach, the recent Papa Roach stuff. He did Teenage Wrist, not the most recent one, but the last one. He does a lot of different sounding bands, so he doesn't really stick with one genre, but whatever he does is just absolutely great. So I think those three are my kind of main ones.
When I was going through Full Sail, and the guy I wanted to be was Ryan Green, because he produced all those Fat Records bands back in the day, the Epitaph bands, and he just had that one sound that you knew it was a Ryan Green record, right? Mm-hmm. And you would always every time a punk CD would come out, I'm like, I bet you that's Ryan Green. Like you could hear it, like you knew it. You knew it was a Ryan Green thing.
The other one's Jerry Finn, rest in peace, Jerry Finn. But if you look at the, in my opinion, some of the best records, like the Blink stuff, the old Blink stuff, Jerry Finn is just incredible. And there's not a lot there about him online. He wasn't really a fan of being on camera or anything. So a lot of his knowledge was kind of gone compared to now where people are putting a lot of stuff out there. But his stuff just sounds so good. But yeah, he died far too soon. Yeah. So you're talking about working with a lot of bands. How many bands would you say you've helped out? Like it's got to be a giant number. I know we've played a numerous amount of bands on our page and on our podcast, but is it in the hundreds by now? It might be getting up there. Probably it's probably not as many as I think. Maybe about 70 or 80, I'd say. Over the few years. I mean, if you count back to when I was just doing demo stuff, probably a bit more. But in terms of the last few years, it's been probably about 60 or 70 bands, I'd say.
Who was the biggest pain in the ass?
Call them out. No, do you know what? I feel lucky that I have never really had any nightmares or anything like that. You know, you hear
No
horror
prima
stories of
donnas or
people-
anything like that?
No. I mean, Mario from Nights Like Thieves. No, sorry, Mario, you're not, dude.
Called you out.
I try and get on a call with bands before I start working with them. I'm like, right, let's jump on a call. So it's not just done over message or anything, because you can get that kind of feeling with each other, especially if you're going to be in a studio together, working on music, because you need to gel, you need to have that vibe. And yeah, I feel like if we chat, they might not like me or I might not like them or something, but yeah, the bands I work with, they're great. Everyone's different. One of my favorite things like about doing this is you kind of get to be part of the band for a certain amount of time. So like,
Sure.
I'll feel like, yeah, these songs are mine, you know, these songs are mine as well.
Right,
And
right.
you become that little, you have your own little in jokes and stuff like that. And then when the songs are done, I can be like, right, there you go and do your thing with them, do all the hard work.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be here when you want to come back and do the next thing. So yeah, I do love that. You become an extra member.
That's awesome. It's got to be really cool. It's like almost like, you know, you're sending your kid off to college.
Yes.
It's like you've prepped him or her for 18 years, and it's like finally time to leave the house and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So I got a couple questions. We did a little, I guess, questionnaire on Instagram, and I had some questions. Let me find it here. So Ollie from Smile More. Have you ever heard of that
Ollie.
band?
Yeah, recorded Smile More. Some good stories about Smile More. Yeah.
Okay, cool. He says, what's the single piece of advice you would give to any aspiring band?
God, a single piece of advice. I would just say, if you love what you're doing, just keep doing it. Just don't give up. You know, don't feel like you have to write songs in a particular way to become successful. Don't feel like you've got to do something just because someone tells you, but just kind of don't give up on it. There are so many bands that I've come across over the years who've maybe just not fulfilled their full potential because they'll hit a roadblock or something and they'll be like, oh, we've played too many gigs to know people. But then just around the corner could have been that one show that one person was at that then could have got them all this extra stuff, you know. But if you enjoy it, I think for musicians it takes a certain breed of person to kind of keep going. But you know, musician, because you're always chasing that high of playing on stage, you're always chasing that next high. There's nothing else that feels like it. So everyone who does it because you love it. You don't do it because it costs money, you know. You're not doing it for that reason. You're doing it because of the passion. So I think my advice would just be keep going, just have fun and do what you love doing. That probably isn't advice as such.
No, that's great advice. No, it's great advice. All right, so I guess there's a second parter. Actually, he's got 3 parts here, so it's a three-parter question. So he says, how do you choose which projects to work on, and are you interested in anything? So any type of bands. Are you gonna ever do a ska band or death metal band?
Yeah, I mean,
would you be up to that?
I tend to have a sort of range of artists that I fit in. Like I've engineered sessions and stuff before that. I mean, engineering's slightly different because if you're capturing the sound, you just need to know the technicalities of setting up the mic and setting up the signal chain and whatnot. So you can do that. If I was going to work on a project and mix it and produce it, I kind of want it to be in my wheelhouse, because otherwise I'm doing a disservice to the music. And I have had that where, you know, I've gone in and I've tracked it and the band have said to me, you know, can you mix it? And I said to them, well, it's not really my style. If I do it, I know that I'm going to want to do it in a certain way, and that's not necessarily how you want it or how it deserves to sound. But I know this other guy who mixes that, so I'll kind of connect them up in that way. So what I always ask is, if I get an inquiry, is I'll get the band to send some demos over. Because if it was like, you know, if it's some death metal band that sent me a demo over, I'm probably not going to do that project justice for them. And I would rather point them in the direction of someone who can, than take it on just for the sake of doing it to earn a few quids, you know.
Right.
So yeah, and it's generally, I'll go from acoustic singer-songwriter stuff to heavier stuff. Anything with guitars and drums and bass, I'm pretty much on board with. But the more extremes, I don't listen to it. Like, it's not really my vibe.
Right.
But everything in between that is all good.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for answering that. All right, so let's talk about the bands now. I want to get into some of the stuff you've been working on recently, but if you've been following this page or you've been following this podcast, you're no stranger to bands like Ultra Apex. They provided Soul Direction, our intro song. Thank you so much to Ken and all those guys there for letting us use that song. Nights Like Thieves, who you just did Move On, who was in our intro of this podcast. Really killer new track by those guys with Angel taking over the lead. You also work with Just a Ride and Ready, Set, Survive, Attendant, all that good stuff. I mean, there's a lot of really killer bands that I've really enjoyed, you having your hands on. So let's talk about some of these newer bands. We played a little bit of Kite Thief earlier. What can you say about Kite Thief? Well, I guess we'll start with Kite Thief, and there's a few other bands I want to talk about here. But let's talk about The Tide by Kite Thief. What about this band like really drew you in? I love this band. We've worked with them in the past as well. What kind of draws you into this band?
I just think that they've got something a little bit different to a lot of everything else that's out there, because they draw on all these different influences, and they're all super talented and really lovely people, and we work together so well. And this is what I mean about feeling like an extra member of the band. And they call me Dad because they're like,
oh, do they?
They're like, hey Dad, can you sort this out for us? But I just kind of feel like to them that I just want them to succeed so much, because they're so great and they're so talented, and I know that they can. The songs are brilliant. They're just absolutely amazing. So I'm like, guys, you can do it. I believe in you. I want you to go and play the stadiums and go on tour and do all this stuff that I never got to do, because I think you can do it. They're absolutely great. And we work really well together. Max is like, me and Max have conversations via TikTok every single day. We're like, those memes where you open up TikTok and there's like 50 different TikToks that you've sent back and forth. That's like me and Max. Like, so we've just got this really good working relationship. And that EP they worked so hard on. And I worked hard on it as well with them, but those guys in particular. And I just think that they're destined for bigger and better things. I really do believe that.
I can hear that. I can hear that with them. They have that big sound where, just all a matter of the right ears listening to it, and they could take off within a minute, Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Blockade. Their new song Avarice. This is such an interesting song. It's kind of a throwback feel kind of vibe to it. It's very Brit rock kind of stuff, like almost Led Zeppelin-ish. Just really killer, really interesting sound to these guys. Let's talk about them. How'd you get started working with them?
So I got referred to them. There's a guy I work with, a mastering engineer called Phil Marsden. Shout out to Phil, really good mastering engineer. And he got the original inquiry on his website, and he basically suggested to them to come and speak to me, because it's not the kind of music that he mixes. So I struck up an initial conversation with Jack, and I think they went and recorded it, and they had some mixes done that some of the band were happy with, and he was maybe like, this isn't quite how I envisaged it. Maybe could you give us a mix and I'll show it to the other guys and see what they think. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. And when I heard the songs and stuff, I was like, again, there's something different about this. There's all these different elements about it, but I don't know, I was getting a kind of Nothing But Thieves kind of vibe from it as well. And there's some really interesting stuff in there. And I did a mix and sent it back to him. And he was like, this is how I pictured it in my head. This is how I wanted it to sound. I was like, great. Because, and again, they're really talented, really lovely guys. They've got a lot of good songs in the pipeline as well, so some exciting stuff coming. They're relatively new, I think the singer had never really sung in a rock band before, and this was his kind of first foray into it. And I was like, wow, those pipes deserve to be on bigger stages. So great little band.
right, so let's talk about Retrograde. Their new song is called Snow. Let's talk about this band. What do you love about these guys?
So they're Italian. So we're going all around the world. And yeah, they sent me this inquiry. The first inquiry I got from them was a couple years ago, and again, I feel lucky because everyone I work with, I'm just saying, they're really nice people, but they genuinely are. And what I love about those guys is they have this really clear vision. So they'll send me all the stems and stuff over, and they send me a little PDF of how they want everything to sound. And it just makes my life, it does make my life easier, because I'm like, right, okay, I know exactly what you want. I know exactly where your references are. I know what I'm doing with this.
Right.
And they're technically very good, very receptive to ideas. They'll send me demos and be like, what do you think of this? Can we tweak this, that, and the other? And yeah, I'm hoping that one day I'll go out to Italy and hang out with those guys and eat pizza and drink coffee and whatever they do over there.
That's one of the great things about probably what you're doing, and having the capability of recording bands from all walks of life. So if you're ever in town or on vacation or holiday or any of that kind of stuff, and you got a couple days to kill, you got friends in Italy, you got all of us here in Florida, you've got Nights Like Thieves out in San Diego, you got
Well, that happened recently. We went to Australia for 3 weeks, and there's an artist called The Effigy who I've done a few mixes for, and she lives in Perth. And we met up in Perth, Australia, and went for some food and hung out for the evening.
That's awesome.
It was great. So shout out to Effie from The Effigy.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah, I think I'm starting to Wes Hoffman's coming in town in I think January, February. So I'm like really excited, and Mario and Angel from Nights Like These, they're talking about coming to Florida as well. So, like any bands that are coming to Orlando that, we're helping promote, I'm all about going to those shows and meeting everybody. So I'm really looking forward to that. All right, so let's talk about the last band here. I don't know if it's a solo act or it's a full band. It's a band called Hollow. The song's called Enough. It's off their We're All Desperate Together record that they just put out. Did you do this whole entire record?
Yeah, first album that I'd mixed from start to finish, which was an experience for me. Yeah, so it's a solo artist, Tom, but he's putting together a band to play stuff live, and he's such a talented dude. Like, he's so creative in all of his sound design and his songwriting. And I did a single for him a couple years ago. He was doing a lot more kind of electronic music, but when I spoke to him, he was like, this is the music that I love. I love the heavier stuff. So I'm trying to combine that. And when I did his first single, he then came back to me and said, look, I've signed to this label. I now want to do an album. I want you involved. Do you want to do it? I was like, hell yeah, man. And again, I remember sitting down and having a chat with him about the album, and we were just going through the songs, and he had such a specific vision on how he wanted it to sound, which again made my life easier because I'm not guessing. And he was really easy to work with in that I'd send stuff back to him and he'd go, maybe this vocal needs to be a bit crunchier here, or this is the kind of vibe that I'm going for on this particular song. But it's super easy back and forth. And that album kind of pushed me in some really positive ways, because there's a lot in that album. If you go and listen to it, some of the tracks are not what I would normally work on. There's a lot more electronic stuff and kind of I don't know all the electronic genres, but he kind of references them, and I just listen to the track and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So then I have to find out how they're getting this effect, and then I'm applying it, and I'm like, man, this is cool. And it was so much fun to work on, and I'm super stoked that it's finally out there, because it was the first album that I'd worked on from start to finish, and it's a different beast working on an album, from singles and EPs. A full album it was hard work, but it was great, and I'm itching to do some more. So if you've got an album out there you want me to mix, then hit me up.
So speaking of which, how long? First of all, how long did it take you to do that whole record or recording to where it's now?
So he tracked all this himself and then sent it over to me. From start to finish, I mean, when I'm mixing a song, I'll probably prep it for, it'll probably take me about half a day to prep a song. So get everything how I want it, edit all the vocals, get it ready to go. Normally I like to mix a song kind of in 2 blocks. So I'll mix most of it. I'll do like 80% of it on one day, and then I'll sleep on it, and then I'll go back to it the next day, and then I'll do the final little bit, because I just like that break to refresh my perspective. So but then by the time you do, so you add that up, there's like 10 tracks on it, so you know, a couple weeks to get it mixed, but then you've got revisions and stuff, and life gets in the way of people sending revisions. But I think all in all, we wrapped that one up in, it took a few months, kind of back and forth between the final mixes and tweaking revisions and stuff. It wasn't like a huge amount of revisions as I thought. We were pretty close on all the first mixes, bar maybe one song where he wanted a slightly different vibe. All the first mixes were pretty much in the ballpark, which I was stoked on. But an album, there's a lot, because you're then thinking about the transitions between songs, how certain songs sound to next ones, making sure that it fits the particular picture, compared to a standalone single where you can just kind of go nuts and do whatever suits the song. I kind of had the rest of them in mind, but yeah.
So if a band is looking to get a hold of you, and what kind of, I think we already discussed it as far as what type of bands you're doing. It's mostly alternative rock, grunge, all that kind of stuff. That's like your wheelhouse. But if anybody wants to get a hold of you and have any questions, how can they do that?
They can go on the website down. I put it in my thing down here, jmarshrecording.com, or you know, Instagram. Everyone's pretty, this is where we chat. We send each other messages on Instagram of what vinyl we've splashed out on this week. So
I got a few in the works, man. I got a few in the works. I can't wait.
What's your next one due in?
I got 3 on order right now. I got Mike Patton's Peeping Tom. Really interesting record. I think you would love it. Have you heard it? He did it with like Dan the Automator, and it's basically got a collection of a whole bunch of different musicians and made a record. It's trippy.
He's incredible though. He's an incredible musician.
He was my idol, like growing up. Like he's my favorite vocalist of all time.
Yeah.
And I also have the new As Friends Rust, a pre-order.
Okay.
Really cool. A melodic hardcore band out of Gainesville that I kind of slept on over the years. That they were on some kind of comp many years ago. They were on Doghouse Records many years ago, and I really loved them, but I never really got into their records. Never knew about them or investigated them further, but I didn't get into them till like mid 2000s, and I was like, I totally slept on this band, and they've become one of my favorite bands, and they just have a new record out, and it's their first one in like 10 or 12 years or something like that, but really killer stuff. And then I've got what's that other band? Really cool punk band. I can't remember right now.
Sorry,
you put me on the spot.
I just saw actually talking about vinyl. Have you seen the Green Day 30-year Dookie thing that they put out?
Yes.
Did you see the price of that vinyl collection?
I did not see it.
It was like I think it was about $300 for the full collection of vinyls, and I'm like, there's a lot in there. I mean, there's probably that, but you know, spending that much on vinyl, I'd probably get in trouble. So
yeah, I had No Use for a Name came out with their full discography on vinyl. Fat Records sold it. All right, hold up. Crap, it's stuck. I can't get it, but I have it like as a frame in my vinyl thing here. But I think it's every single one of their records, and it cost me around $200-300 for it, and I had to take it out of my savings. I'm like, I can't do it out of my I can't do it out of my regular checking account. My wife will literally punch me in the face. It's just one of those things I needed. Yeah, it's an addiction, right? Like, I don't know, like I collected CDs for years. I have like over 3,000 CDs. I've got roadie cases here, like the DJ cases, whatever. I've got 3 of them. You could see it right here. Right.
I can see
there.
Yeah.
I got 3 of those, and each one of those like holds like 1,500 or or something like that, CDs or something like that. But yeah, it's I was a CD freak, and like, working in radio, like we would get all free CDs all the time. I'm like, even if I didn't like the band, I'm building a collection, and I had all the shells, and I wanted to create a library. And I got married, and my wife is like, you're not putting CDs everywhere. You're not creating shelves, because I wanted to have like my own little library. And she's like, no, can we compromise? I'm like, all right. So got rid of the shelves, got those. Then I started vinyl, during the pandemic, and she bought me actually this lovely IKEA thing here. So I was like, okay. So she kind of opened up, and we compromised. She likes the vinyl a little bit better than the CDs.
Dude, that's so funny, because we've literally had identical experiences. My CDs, my wife's like, are you going to get rid of all your CDs? I'm like, no way. So, but they're under the stairs. They're shut away in a cupboard. But she's like, the vinyl's okay. So the vinyl sits in an IKEA, probably the same IKEA unit in white as what you've got.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's funny because I have like this my own little corner in this guest room, right? It's not like I'm in like this major studio. So let's see if you can. So there's the bed I sleep on when my wife kicks me out, and then that's my like I said, I have like this one little corner. It's my my man cave. It's a man corner. I call it.
That's it. This is what I want. What my dream is a room with a big window, with a chair, one chair that just looks out the window, 2 speakers either side of the window, and a wall of vinyl. So you just go in, and the sole purpose of that room is just to sit and listen to music and watch the world go by. That in my head.
You and me are kindred spirits, man. That's exactly what I want to do.
We've got to do it. Maybe we should just ditch the wives and move in together, man. That's what we got to do.
Let's do it. We'll probably save a lot more money.
Yeah.
We'll save a lot more money, and then we'll be able to buy more vinyl and just have.
We wouldn't need just buy vinyl,
yeah. It's so funny. There's a really cool picture about like what makes a man happy, and it was basically like a like a folding chair, like a tailgating chair, and it's like a TV that's on the ground. It's like this is the only thing that makes guys happy, and like girls get so angry that like this will make a guy happy, and I had many apartments that were like that.
Simple things, I'm ready simple minds, right?
Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly. Oh, dude. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, man. Really appreciate you taking time. I love meeting you, man. We'll definitely have to do this again. I think we're gonna have to do like a I don't know, maybe we get Alter Apex and Nights Like Thieves and Just Ride, get everybody on one giant call. I don't know if we can
That'd be
set
great.
it up if we have if we can have like multiple things, but it would be total chaos. But
let's do it.
We'll have to. Yeah, we'll have to get together. If you're ever in town here in Florida, man, let's do it. I hope to one day get over to the UK.
Yes.
If I ever do, I'm gonna hit you up, man. We'll do it. We'll do it up.
Absolutely, man. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, brother. Take care.
Cheers, man. Take care. Bye.
See you.